be here, have the option to listen to this. So this is February 4th, 2022, Alaska version 3. And I think everybody kind of knows everybody, but let's just take a second and check in on what's happening and agenda setting. The agenda, shoot, I'm on my, I don't know if I can put the link in there. If you need the link to it, let me know and I'll figure out how to do that, but I'm juggling. But the agenda that I've got proposed in the note I sent out this morning was to go over the proposal that Beth and Ariel have provided to help us do some work on the backbone organizational creation and the Alaska Engagement Dialogue program, kind of focused in on the Innovation Summit as a deliverable target for both of those activities. And there goes my computer again. And then the second thing was going over the Innovation Coalition and the outline that I sent out to a bunch of folks regarding Innovation Coalition and a proposed gathering at the summit on that. And then if we have time, I was interested in checking in on February events that we might work on, and also the creative writing contest. I've reached out to Alaska Humanities Forum and I'm interested in trying to move that along at this point. So as we do just quick check-in and introductions, like I said, I think everybody knows everybody. If you have additional items that you want on the agenda or a reordering of any of that because of constraints, let me know. And so Beth and Ariel, why don't you guys just start off with this?
Okay. Alrighty. So we proposed. Ariel, do you want to start? Here and just jumping in.
Yeah, this is just quick, just check in, just say hi and
Hi.
what's going on right now.
Hi, everybody. It's Friday, and I'm happy about that.
Yeah,
Right.
excited to kind of talk through what we are proposing to come up with the kind of MVP pitch deck and engagement model or process to convene folks. And so we can plan to kind of talk through the different tasks and what that might entail to give you a sense of what we could possibly do together.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, thanks, Andy, and then Kitty, if you can jump on.
Hey, I'm just popping in for as long as I have. I don't know if I have the full hour, but not really anything new to add for this week. So I'm gonna hand it off.
Thanks. Kitty, are you there? And I understand you're driving, so don't worry about it if you can't.
Parked at a left turn lane, so this is as good a time as any. And good morning, all. I am driving and then hustling, so I will be listening, but not able to jump in very often at all today. I'm going to be out of pocket for 2 weeks. Kind of looking forward to that, but I really also hope the momentum to do this. You know, shifting from, I love the conversations we've had. I just want to engage more people. So I'm actually pretty excited about making that move. And so I'm keenly engaged from afar, if you will. Anyway, good to hear your voices.
Well, thanks, Kitty. Let's see, Pasquale and Margie.
I can go. Hey everyone, I actually don't think I've met Ariel yet. I'm Margie, I use she, her pronouns. I'm on Denny, Land and Anchorage and the Regenerative Economies Coordinator for the Fairbanks Climate Action Coalition and Native Movement. And so really excited to be catching up to the thinking that you all have been doing and supporting this next phase and helping bridge this all with the Alaska Climate Alliance network that is kind of where a webinar that we hosted last Thursday kind of grew out of, but very much flourished because of the support of this group and the dozen co-sponsors, including AKV3 and AP. So very, very grateful to just, pass along the success of that event to this group, since I wasn't able to join last week, and say how awesome it was. We had a ton of people show up. We did get Zoom bombed, but we have edited that out of the recording. And I think there's a ton of momentum coming from that I hope we can help channel to this. And while I have the mic, just to say, like, folks are really welcomed into their meetings that are Mondays at 2 p.m. for the Alaska Climate Alliance. So we'll be, I think, having a pretty parallel conversation this coming Monday in terms of what it sounds like is on the agenda here. So I'm happy to help be that conduit, but would welcome anyone else who's able to join to be merging these conversations.
Great, thanks, Margie. And I'm just looking to see if this thing is, the Monday meeting is on our agenda. I don't see it. So are you guys meeting every Monday right now?
It's every other Monday. So we didn't meet this past Monday. So we are meeting on the 7th.
Let's try and come back to that if we have a few minutes as we, I think there's that intersection in there, but I want to try and understand how to navigate the intersection and whether to work on more clarity in the uniqueness or more clarity in the commonality. And I'm game for both, and maybe both are good, but I see that as kind of a jiggling issue right now. Just okay, good enough for now. Let's see, who did I miss? Pasquale, I think. Going once, going twice. You in there, Pasquale? All right, we'll circle back if we get a chance.
Too much background noise right now.
Oh, okay, very good. So I don't think I have too much just as far as check-ins. It's been a wild week. The Denali Commission proposal has gone pretty well, and I'm realizing I don't know if I've shared it with everybody here, so I probably need to put a link into that for the draft that's out working. It's been fun working on it, and this is again a proposal to test out the idea that our public projects, so dams and, or excuse me, docks and roads and bridges and water and wastewater systems, all the money we spend billions of dollars on every year in Alaska. And it's actually going back up. It had dropped down to a couple $100 million a year. It is now the budget that was passed in the last legislative session was back up to about $2 billion. Infrastructure bill brings it up to potentially another $5 billion through the federal infrastructure bill. And the thesis of this project is that we can create the next economy, the next Alaska, in some part by trying to use all that public spending as a catalyst for economic development and community development opportunities, rather than looking at them as just spending projects to be managed as a contract. And so the thesis is built around creating a clarity or more information around the networks that exist in this state around these kind of projects and organizations that are involved with it, and being able to create a database of the key projects for the pilot. It'll just focus in on the infrastructure bill and the state capital budget and the Denali Commission projects, and to then look at those and try and pull out of those projects that might have an opportunity either on the front end of the project to create capability, capacity, and competitiveness in Alaska, to get more local engagement with those projects, and or to see how the projects can be linked together, how the results of the projects can be a catalyst for new economic activity. So if you put a broadband project in Dutch Harbor, for example, is there a process by which we can be engaging the community ahead of the project being completed on how that could be a catalyst for new business opportunities, as opposed to building the project out, checking it off as a capital construction project, and then somebody wonders, well, what do we do next with that? So anyway, it's a fun project I want to share with you. I've also put the link in the notes from today to the recording that Margie had mentioned is there. if you missed that meeting on the 27th, it's worthwhile to see the diversity of projects going on in our state. It's really pretty invigorating to see what's going on. So enough of that for the moment. Let's see, before diving in, just a quick check-in. I see Atlas has joined us. Hello, Atlas. Anything you want to share initially?
Hey, good morning, everyone. No, nothing from me. Thank you.
Good to have you here today. So let's jump in then to the proposal that Beth and Ariel have offered. And just for background for everybody else, Kitty has worked with the two of them in the past on other projects. And some of those projects I think have kind of overlapped into kind of engagement that we're looking at in terms of community outreach and dialogues. But Kitty's brought them in to help us think through, I think, what are kind of two broad areas of interest. One is helping develop the materials, the messaging, the engagement tools that we would use to help build the backbone organization, AKV3, and be in a position to present it to other organizations for funding and support, more formality than we've had before, with that information and some clarity in the messaging that would hopefully lead to both alliances with those other organizations, but also funding for some of the projects we would do. And the second part is a little more focused effort at the intent to try and develop an engagement strategy for community discussions, but with a key piece of this being hanging on to kind of our ethos that we've had for the past year of not just having good discussions and dialogue, but trying to pull out of that the actions and opportunities that we can move ahead with and how to build that out. Both of these projects are kind of aimed towards having the tools for the backbone organization and the proposal for the engagement dialogue series, including a prototype that could be run, all coming together as a nexus of the Innovation Summit. So they've been off working on that proposal. We've met with them separately earlier this week to kind of brainstorm, discuss this. We've also asked them to integrate the material that Atlas has been working on to upgrade the messaging on the website, as well as to recognize that there is a lot of existing messaging and work that we've done that we can build off of rather than starting from scratch. So today they're coming in with the proposal that they've drafted for us to take a look at. I'll turn it back over to Beth and Ariel if you want to kind of walk us through this and any comments you have just in terms of your own framing of what we're doing and where we're at.
Ariel, you want to start?
Would it be helpful to share the PDF that you sent out, or?
Well, it's in his agenda. Except for,
Do you want me to share my screen though, and we can use it to talk through?
sure, because it includes the timeframes.
Yeah, it's got the time frames. You guys see my screen? Cool.
Yep.
Well, maybe we can just kind of tag team and go back and forth here, because it's Beth and I both have like separate pieces that weave in and out together, and could be in development at the same time. So I think the first part here is just for us it's like having a shared grounding of understanding in terms of how we're framing the opportunity. There's a lot of different, I started reading the dissertation, Kai, that you sent yesterday. And what I'm learning is like, there's a lot of the same flavor, but the language of just how we're calling, like what we're labeling things is different. So different people have different labels for things, but in essence, it's all speaking the same language. And so there's a little bit of synthesis of Beth and I getting up to speed on kind of like your framing and the resources that you've been leveraging to create your framing. And also it's like a research, it's kind of like the research approach to kind of go through and look at everything to be able to consolidate it into what the engagement plan or strategy could be. So that's kind of this first portion of discovery. And the intention is like, if we can get started next week, like next week would be our focus, is just to get up to speed on all the materials and take some notes and maybe theme some of the data that we're finding in all of these materials. And then
let me just jump in here quickly, Ariel, because my piece of this is going to be focused on really reviewing everything that you have already done. So the website, materials, listening to meetings, reviewing my own notes, and doing some, I may rely a little bit on Ariel to fill me in on some of the bigger engage, some of the bigger resource documents, like the dissertation. If she's reading through that, maybe I read through Divide and Conquer. But for me, it's really looking through your key materials and just getting a sense of what's there so that we can synthesize it. Great. So that's the first discovery process.
perfect. Do you want to keep?
Yeah, I'll just go. So the role that I would be playing would be more or less to create an executive summary that would synthesize the materials and be a piece that you can use moving forward in developing some, not developing, but maybe refining and recrafting some key messages, but also just having a 1-pager or a 2-pager you can use to hand out to people for both sharing information with potential alliances, but also as funding. It will help maybe guide what some grants might look like, or there would be information in there that would be useful to you in that. And then it will also inform, and I think this is where Ariel and I start integrating in a pitch deck for you to have by the conference that would present key aspects of what you're doing and why you're doing it and why it's important. And it would include a couple of slides on the engagement approach, so the dialogic part of that. And again, we've assigned some timelines here, but these are our hopeful timelines. And also, obviously, there's going to be some iterations with a team. It would be really nice to have a like a committee, review committee for materials. Maybe not everybody's involved in the writing aspect and not everybody's involved in the dialogic aspect, but maybe we have a few people that review each, just for the sake of being efficient. So I find often when I'm writing that, you don't want to have too many cooks in the pot, but I think we have to decide which cooks we want. So, but next week's really, I think for us, just diving deep and understanding. So,
okay.
Ariel, back to you.
Yeah. And I echo Beth of like, who's the core group to help with the dialogue portion. And maybe that's a different configuration than the broader framing of the effort. The first thing that I would start is with Kai and pretty much hearing your interpretation of the matrix that you drew, because I feel like you've already done a little bit of synthesis in your head of how these things come together and how they could fit together. And I think that's like a really good place to start from and understand what that model looks like, put it to paper, like electronically, and then add some context from some of the research, like add the description of how this works and also like what we want to call it in layman's terms.
Mm-hmm.
And that would kind of go into, that would be like the leading artifact to frame the methodology. And so put together like a 3 to 5 page summary document of like what the different steps of this could be and what are the different considerations. And then like the more synthesized, simple visual version in slides. So like translate that into slides. And the last thing would be the, so what's this look like in practice? So what would be a 90-minute experimental session that we could do that is modeled or mirrored after this model, and putting it in a design document and readying, like kind of handing it over to Kai and team to then pick somebody to be able to facilitate this at the March session. So the intention is to give people an experience of what the process feels like, knowing it's just a sliver of the process and it's just the beginning and only all that you can really do in 90 minutes, but hopefully create more interest and in from funders and help kind of frame the potential. This does not account for iteration, like, right? So I tried to keep the hours pretty slim. And so if there's a way that we can minimize or like simplify the iteration process, I think that would help.
Hey, this is Kitty. I have a half minute to contribute if this is okay.
Go ahead.
I think, so I'm excited to see this. I would be happy to be on the feedback team, certainly for the dialogue side where my head's mostly at, and secondarily the other piece, noting that I'm a little out of pocket, but offline I'll find times to read. Another thought on the two-pager or the pitch deck, I think it's really valuable to include in what we take to the Innovation Summit, the pitch includes, I don't know if this is already part of your mindset, but I wanted to ask for it, is where we're going next in terms of a series of dialogues, harvesting the innovations and, in an appreciative inquiry model, harvesting what people have done and are leaning towards with that best of innovation experience, so that as the summer unfolds, we're not only building the narrative, the stories, the picture of the future, but we're attracting the key allies we're going to need to really do this at a scaled statewide level. So something about the process, which we don't fully know yet, but let's pitch something that can be adapted with experience. That's my comment. Back to mute.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions from what we've shared so far?
I wonder if either of you could reflect on how you see the connection that we should layer into this to Atlas's work on updating the website and some of the social media content that they've been working on. And I say that cautiously because I'm not trying to add to the work products or to the effort, but on the other hand, Atlas has got a draft of the website content that they're working on with Pasquale, and we've kind of asked them to kind of slow down for the moment while this comes together. But on the other hand, I think it needs to kind of merge back together again in terms of the feedback that they get and moving ahead with that, so that what comes out of what you're doing helps inform in any way necessary the changes, and we actually get the changes made to the website and use this to guide some of the social media so we can be building towards the summit engagement. So I'm just wondering if you've thought about, or if we could discuss, and maybe Atlas has got some thoughts on this in terms of how do we fit this together without leaving everyone, with you guys doing your work up till, March 15th. And then all of a sudden on March 15th, we turn around to Atlas and say, perform a miracle in the next 12 hours. But instead, I think to some degree, if Atlas, is a part of the team reviewing this early on, we minimize some of that. But anyway, I've talked enough. I'm curious either from your perspective or Atlas' perspective, how we link these two activities so that they're complementary and not disjointed.
Yeah, I can get really quick. that's kind of what I was thinking, is that I'd be happy to be part of the review team for one, just so I can keep my kind of hands in the pot as things develop. But Ariel and Beth, as for your understanding, I guess context, there's the word, to where I'm at. I'm kind of in editing phase now. So I've done like the initial thinking, the drafting. And so I'm just kind of waiting for feedback or like maybe the massive changes that need to happen as you guys develop your narrative. So that's kind of where I'm at. Like I've done a lot of the drafting. So even if the editing is big changes, that's where my head is at, just so you guys know.
Yeah, one of my first things, Atlas, thank you, will be to look at the website copy and to read it and use it as part of my overall, you know, kind of looking at all of the documents and looking at everything and trying to synthesize it in my brain. So my hope, to your point, Kai, would be to have something done by the end of February. Would 3 week, when is the conference, the 17th?
16th and 17th of March.
17th. So I guess, Atlas, a question for you is, you know, hopefully there wouldn't be massive website changes, but what kind of time frame would you need to make adjustments to the website if needed? I'm just curious, like, so we're not, I definitely don't want to put you in the 12-hour, 24-hour turnaround thing.
Yeah, no worries. For the most part, when it comes to implementing stuff onto the website, that tends to be Pasquale, but I think I have the backend access to do that. So I mean, honestly, like shortest period of time is a week, but typically, like with client work, I do 2 weeks.
Okay, so I think I had on the proposal, Kai, to try to have things done by the beginning of March. So that's gives you about that would give the website team, and of course, in this process too, as we're thinking about this, we can pull out, you know, we work together with our little committee to pull out, like, where does the website maybe need some changes, and what could be some pithy things we could use on social media. I mean, we can yank that out, but the point is to get something down and then work with it and then collaborate with Pasquale and Atlas and you all to just make sure that you're in agreement with what's been written first, and then we can decide what we want to include in the website and what we could pull out for social media. Do you have a Facebook page now? You do, right?
Yeah, we have, most of our work has been focused in on a Facebook group and a LinkedIn group. And then there is also a Facebook page, but we've not done a lot with that. That just became kind of a necessary piece at some point because there's some functionality you couldn't do in groups that needed a page. And so that's kind of a little disjointed, but the two groups have been the main focus of content. And a lot of the work that Atlas had done last year focused in on helping guide the creation of some of the content that helped get those two groups moving along and using that as a platform to engage people outside of these regular meetings. And then just for background, Pasquale, who's on the call and may or may not be able to chime in depending upon that background noise he has. Pasquale is the one that built the website and has been working on the organization of that. Alice has been collaborating with Pasquale to provide the content. And I'm not sure behind the scenes exactly who's been doing the detailed content work, but the general approach has been that Pasquale's been building the site, building the structure, the bones to the whole thing, and adding some of the elements in there, whereas Atlas has been working on the messaging, the content that's been put on there. And I think they kind of overlap. So we need to coordinate with both of them, both in terms of kind of the structure of the website, if we see an opportunity to do something there, but then the actual editing of content and the placing of editing, that's kind of content creation was kind of an Atlas thing. The content placing, structure, menuing, all that kind of stuff is Pasquale, but they definitely overlapped a little bit in that area.
Yeah, so that makes sense to try to get it ready as, you know, within the next 3 weeks and have something to them in collaboration with them, and then if something grokked for them to work with, and then launch everything before the 17th or 16th. So that was,
I just got to say, I love working with somebody that understands what grokking is all about. It just
sorry,
makes
it's
me
such an old term.
it makes me giggle every time I hear it. And I'm just wondering if Atlas has any idea what we're talking about. I'm sure Dick does. I see Dick Lefevre joined us here at some point, but thank you for adding that in there. Dick, it's good to see you.
Maybe, I don't know.
Briefly, Dick, we're working on the proposal that Beth and Ariel have worked on to be able to help construct a more professional and more organized package around the summary pitch deck information about AKV3 and the move to create AKV3 as a real backbone organization. And Ariel's working on a little more focus on creating an engagement dialogue series, both kind of the big picture that would roll out across the state, we hope, but also designing in a prototype or a pilot conversation we can have during the Innovation Summit in the middle of March.
Yeah, it sounds good. I been out of the meeting cycle here we were outside for 6 weeks, and I was late getting here. I had a doctor's appointment this morning. All good, everything good. So
Thanks.
yeah,
And
I'll get caught up here.
yeah, that'd be good. And, it'd be really valuable. And this is, a bit of a reach depending upon your availability, but Beth and Ariel, if we could get Dick involved in helping with the review of this. He's been involved in organizational development. He knows about all the statewide dialogue projects. He's been involved in some of those, a wealth of knowledge, and I think spans a greater network of Alaska organizations and history. And I'm not calling anybody old, but at any rate, Dick, as we start, building out some of the draft materials, it'd be really nice to have your input and involvement in there. Okay, thanks, Dick.
So maybe, yes, Dick, nice to meet you. Maybe we regroup early next week, Kai, and just get the contracting stuff done, and then we can have a conversation collectively about what, who's on what committee and what makes sense. And I think Ariel and I are very eager to move forward as quickly as we can, given the time frame.
Sounds good to me. So I'm going to assume that most of the folks in this group today are going to be kind of that core group, looking at some of this. The connections that Margie offers to the groups and networks there are really vital, and getting her input on this would be super helpful. The connection to Pasquale and Atlas, we've already talked about. Dick, we've talked about. Kitty's obviously interested in this, and myself. And I'm not sure, Andy, kind of where you're at in terms of time, whether you want to specifically get mixed up in this effort. I'm not even sure Andy's still here. Oh, looks like we lost Andy. Okay, well, no worries. I know she said she might have to go. So anyway, I think this group is kind of the core group that will move ahead at this point. And then there's a loose end issue that I've put in the notes here about I need to be watching for a facilitator for the Innovation Summit pilot thing. And, I could probably do that, but I'm not sure I'm not sure I'm the best choice. I'm kind of one of those putter people. You can always put me in there, but Lord knows there's always somebody better and more skilled at some of this stuff. I can just kind of get it done. What I do want to say, though, just as my own feedback, back in this note, it's looked like this co-design session with Kai to document and flush out engagement, blah, blah, blah. It's really vital here when we get into this co-designing this session, that I really need this to be more than me in here. I'll help you design something that won't work. And I know that about myself because I tend to fly at too high an altitude. So it's going to be really vital that we find whether that's some time from Kitty, who's been involved in more of these kinds of sessions, or it's somebody else here. It'd be super cool if Margie was interested in in this design aspect. And I think she brings in a connection and an understanding of a whole bunch of different groups that are kind of on, you know, my outer orbit. But don't let me drive this thing too much, and you have to push back against me, because I'm going to drive you and suck you off into different directions, and it won't be good. It'll sound great and it'll feel good, but you know, I really need the diversity, that cognitive diversity in this process, so that we design something that's great and not just, you get the idea.
I think I got what you said, but I'm wondering if I can learn more about what the design section that you're speaking to is right now.
The line item that says co-design session with Kai to document and flush out engagement models. So that pretty much came from my assumption that like there's something that's percolating, that's kind of like floating, that's almost hasn't landed yet. And so I felt like that's where I wanted to start, at least for a kind of like that first picture. But so I think what it could look like is a couple of maybe 1 or 2 meetings with a wider group of people that allows for some of that iteration that I was saying that I didn't necessarily account for. Because I do agree that anytime that I have a design team, the product is much better at the end because of the diversity of the whole and what each perspective is, how each perspective is brought in. So yeah, I kind of see like maybe we find there's like the larger committee for the overall effort, and then we have like a subcommittee who wants to just go deep on this design piece for a couple meetings with me.
Yeah, I don't know, Margie, is that something that you're interested in and available for?
Yeah, I think that sounds like a great fit. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was going to echo the request for Margie. Maybe Nita, and sure out there also, depending on, so Sarah Barton's the other name that I tossed around. But I do think, Margie, you'll bring tremendous ideas of how to make sure this flows. And by the way, Ariel, the 2x2 matrix that I know you're referring to that Kai sketched and shared, I don't think that is going to too substantially affect the design of the dialogues, to be honest. It's worth us having a conversation where Kai can walk us through it, but I think it's a very, like he said, he flies at a pretty high altitude. It's a pretty macro view of how mature are our networks, how mature is the narrative. And the point is that they both need development in order for us to achieve what we want. And that's where these initial dialogues fill the funnel, build the relationships, strengthen the networks, you know, and give us the narrative for what's working. I think that the 2x2 is just giving us sort of an evidence of why we need to be directly engaging diverse audiences now in this innovative ecosystem work.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it was hard to read, so I don't even really know. Like I don't know what the model says yet, but that's helpful. It's a starting point, and I think what we want to end up with though is like some sort of model, like some sort of visual, cyclical, iterative process around engagement and around like considerations for how we're engaging people and who we're engaging.
Great. And in fact, some of the best illustrations are in the strategic doing work. So the dissertation may not have all the graphics in it. So don't hesitate to ask, because that's where I feel like it's one of the things that's missing from all previous dialogues is this doing and this result orientation. Right.
Cool. Yeah, I basically just have the dissertation, which has so much in it, which is super helpful and very coherent in how I think about all of this stuff too. And so if there are specific resources that any of you guys have, like maybe we could have a little Google, like a folder on the G Drive where you could just continue to add resources if there's anything that you think is important to be included.
Yeah, there definitely are. And Kai, what would be good is if we had, whether you add it to the calendar or share it with this group, is all of the Kauffman-funded strategic doing agile economics workshops that are occurring right now, and ideally the recording to the most recent one, because I think that would be like a speed course in getting the orientation around this for Beth and Ariel.
I agree.
Is that recorded?
I haven't seen it come out yet. I was gonna wait till today because that happened. Sorry. That happened last Friday, and I was going to give them till the day to post it, and then I was going to go rattle their cage for it. But I agree that session is probably one of the best ones I've seen that Ed gave that really hits. I was excited for him and excited for his synthesis of this work. The dissertation that you guys have is valuable, but it's also it goes far afield in a lot of other areas. But I'll look for the resources and post those, and look at rearranging some of the Google folder content, or share some links to guide people into the resources that are there and the resources we can add.
Great, perfect.
Beth or Kai, this is Dick. Sorry to be behind the 8 ball here. What are the resources you're looking for specifically?
Well, I think it's strategic doing, transformative scenario planning, which I bought I think I have that book now. I think I bought that book. So we have the dissertation for strategic doing, but we probably need a little bit more context, or maybe some like the recording or whatever else you have on strategic doing. And then we were also talking about AI, appreciative inquiry, which I have a decent amount of stuff on. AI, and also like regenerative design principles. I haven't looked into the regenerative economic framework super deeply. That I know there is a framework that exists out there, and so I was hoping to weave that in, or maybe that even goes in the pitch deck. But let me know. Tell me what I'm missing.
Oh, not a comment?
I'm jumping in because I have to jump out pretty quickly. On the regenerative economics, that's really a Margie resource. She'll tap us in. But Oscar Adelandas did recommend donut economics. And on strategic doing, I have a massive file folder with decades worth of stuff. I will try very hard to just dissect out the best bits, because you don't want everything I've got. But there's a ton available from me on strategic doing. And Kai probably because he's recently taken the class.
It would be great if, Kai, if we could just, so that's a good list for Ariel, and for me, Dick, it will be what's been written, the website. I need to look at the Facebook page. I'm working on the materials. So meetings, reviewing my own meeting notes and understanding of it. And just so I will be looking at these other things as well. But for me, it's really to suss out what you've already got materials and where we need refinement. And so I think just a point of simplicity, having these resources, and I think Kai, you mentioned you have a folder, like pointing us to in one place where we can have access to things that would be really useful, so we don't have to go looking for it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Realize we're 10 minutes away from.
Yeah, I think we've got a basic plan, just so everybody kind of understands. At this point, there's some dollars and cents behind this proposal, and Kitty and I have offered to essentially invest in this effort. I am going to put the ask out if there are others that would like to share in the investment of creating these materials, but both Kitty and I I think, shared a common interest of we need help getting this done, and we're willing to get the help and invest in it to be able to accomplish this work. So there is a behind the scenes. So the comment about getting a contract done, that's a contract that'll be done between Beth and Ariel and AKV3 as a business entity to do that. But the money is going to come essentially from a couple of us that have stepped into wanting to do this, but we'll be open to others that want to help with that effort. Anything else, Beth and Ariel, that you want to cover or questions? Otherwise, I want to take a couple minutes and shift into the Innovation Coalition and wrap up with the writing program with the time that we have. But last call for anybody on this project of our backbone development and the workshop and the summit. Going once, going twice. Okay. thank you for the preparation you did to have that ready for our discussion today. The Innovation Coalition, I just wanted to briefly mention here, I've put out the ask to a number of folks around the state that are involved in innovation related activities, the Launch Alaskas and Health Ties of the World, as well as others that are involved with that, proposing a meetup at the Innovation Summit to dive into the work of creating this coalition. I'm trying to be a little careful about trying not to let this meeting be focused in on creating the coalition as a thing, but really more to invite people into the discussion, focused in on starting off with just some coordination that might exist in 2022 around calendars and programs, and kind of bringing people to a focus of the 2022 startup week later this year. And that was something that people had wanted to talk about anyway, in that. But I want to try and bring them into then a broader discussion about the gaps that we have in our innovation ecosystem, the opportunities that exist, as well as some of the metrics that might be valuable if we were able to aggregate them. I see that as kind of the three main areas that this coalition can try and focus in on. I'm trying to get some folks from the Calgary Innovation Coalition and Alberta Innovates to potentially come to this summit. So far, they're not engaging me as well as I would hoped on this, but that's my hope that that will happen. So I'm interested if there's any questions anyone has, or interest or thoughts related to the Innovation Coalition efforts at this point. Okay, going once, going twice. Cool. I'll keep you informed on what's happening there. And if you run into anybody you think is interested in that work, do let me know. Then I wanted to touch on the writing contest. We ran that contest last spring. Alice put a lot of time into helping with that program, as well as Pasquale had provided the space and the website to help us have the resources to communicate that. And that ended up pulling together a nice cross-section of submissions. We didn't get that stuff published when we thought, because of the restructuring at the Humanities Forum, and the pieces were finally published in the fall, but came out nice as a beautiful magazine. I think all of you, or most all of you, have seen that. In the published form, we had the two categories, an open one and then a youth one for under 18. And I haven't had anybody really jiggling excitedly about us doing it again. But on the other hand, it seemed like it went well and garnered a lot of interesting submissions. And I'm interested in moving it along again this year. I've reached out to Alaska Humanities Forum, copied Kitty on this, engaging them in the question of, are they interested in being a co-sponsor again, as they were last year, and basically with the ask of publishing the winning material again. I'm hoping they will, because I think what was published was good material. I think it added to their magazine and their outreach, and I think we're lucky to have their kind of blind faith that we were going to come up with something publishable, and I think it worked out nicely. So I'm optimistic that they'll be supportive, but I've asked them two questions. One is, will they support another writing contest this winter and publish it this summer? Second question for them is, can we sit down and talk about a greater alignment between Alaska version 3's work and Alaska Humanities work at this point? Kitty, who's on the board of the Humanities Forum, is a great connection for us across that. So that's happening. But I'm curious, with the folks that are here who have some familiarity with the writing contest, what your thoughts are. Is this something that you see some energy and an opportunity and value in doing again, or was that a fun thing we did one time and it worked out okay, but doesn't need to be repeated? Any thoughts and ideas or suggestions, both on repeating it or maybe doing it differently. If maybe there's some value in there that could be enhanced by focusing it differently.
I mean, I think it's definitely worth doing again. I would say we should engage the writers at maybe a little bit more of a mature level when we have the idea and the incentives all set in stone. I think that's what's gonna get them engaged and excited about being published, or honestly the money. So in terms of doing it differently, I guess we should start considering what we will do if Alaska Humanity Forum isn't on board for publishing. Just as like a backup to consider what else we could provide as an incentive.
Sure. We had also, thrown out the idea of having some other categories in terms of some visual arts. And I don't know if that makes any sense, or if we should, in terms of the forms, last year we suggested essays, short stories, and poems. And that's kind of, a default starting point in terms of what we might do this year. But I'm curious if anybody has any thoughts on potentially opening that up to other media, or if that gets too confusing if we move away from the written word and start trying to mix a visual arts effort inside of this. I'd originally thought that it might be a separate contest to have a visual arts type of event that would be offered at a different time, but that didn't come together last fall. So there is that option of folding that into this also. Any thoughts on other media forms?
I like the idea. Like my brain goes to like at some point pairing the writing with a visual aspect, and then that being like we pretty much have the published piece ready for them to go. But in terms of engaging that and the time frame we would need, I don't know if we would need longer, because typically visual art takes longer. But I don't know. Maybe people would just they would put pieces into the competition that they've already created. But I like the idea, but the logistics, I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's a group of Alaskan artists for a just transition that would be fun to engage here. It's a largely dormant email list right now, but we collaborated with Alyssa Quinton in Fairbanks to do the graphics for the webinar that we will also be like building a website and other publications like a zine with. So yeah, I'm just thinking how actually like vital being able to picture the future is. So I think it's a wise investment of time. And just for those who didn't see the comment that I dropped in the chat, I also think that with the writing contest, circling back to that UAF professor who joined one of the AKV3 meetings would be really helpful in the early phase of planning that contest.
That's a great reminder. I recall that was interesting and had drifted out of this my brain cells. So thanks for bringing it back to the surface. Reach out to her. Other thoughts or comments on this? Otherwise, I'll kind of lurch ahead with working on this. Probably putting an ask out to folks to do what we did last year. For those that don't recall specifically, is we put an ask out to the AKV3 community, the broader 100 or so folks that are on the mailing list, and asked for financial support for the prizes. So we raised about $1,000 for prizes that were then distributed to the winners that went out to I think we ended up having 4 winners that got that money. So that was how we funded that. And I've noticed also that the UAA writing contest is going on right now. It's an annual thing. Its prizes are actually smaller than what we offered. It goes back to, I think, the point, I'm sorry, I can't remember whether Atlas or Margie brought it up, but the most valuable part here for these folks, in what I've learned, is the ability to get published and have their work shared. The money is nice and not to be overlooked, but it's also not necessary to have anything huge, particularly if you have a good venue for sharing the information. Cool. Anything more on that? Going once, going twice. Okay, I think that's a good wrap for today. Margie, anything that you want to circle back on in terms of your work with the workshop last week, or anything that you wanted to make sure got shared before we wrap up for today?
I think just mostly figuring out how we continue to interface. Like you said, that's kind of in flux right now. So Kai, are you able to come on Monday at 2? Should I reach out to Ryan?
I am.
Cool.
Yes, I've got it on my calendar there. I just need to look for an invite. I assume maybe there's an invite or something.
I'll
Copy
add
from
you
this
both
meeting.
to the recurring invite. And let's see, I guess it was Ben who joined last time. Should I also add him to the recurring, or?
I think it's would be a question to ask him. I mean, he's
Great.
not looking for new things. I know he mentioned last time that he felt like maybe he got there because I asked him. I'm not sure how that happened. I accept that maybe I did, but I'm also really cautious about too many asks for him because he's got a lot going on. I really value his time, but I'm also kind of careful about, when I ask.
All right, I
so
won't
that I
add
know
him
that-
then.
Yeah, I think
Yep.
so far, I think he's so interested in so many good things going on here, but I'm judicious about where I ask him.
That's good.
Okay, cool. Well, that'd be great to do that. I look forward to that discussion and following up on that. And then I guess just as a final comment, there's a bunch of things going on tomorrow related to the Black Business Expo that's happening at the museum tomorrow afternoon. And the museum is open and free, I think, all day tomorrow. So if you're out and about tomorrow, I encourage you to stop by. The expo is actually going on just in the afternoon. I think it's like 1 to 5 or something like that. But I encourage you to be aware of that and consider visiting that. Any other comments or closing thoughts?
Just excited to support you guys in this work. And I really believe in the potential and where this is heading. And it feels like early days. And I really trust that, I don't know, I just trust the unraveling of all of this. And it was really nice to be a part of the call last week, Margie, and inspiring. And yeah, I'm just grateful to support you guys.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Ditto.
And just in case okay, you saw that, Marty. Okay, we're all good. Thanks. All right, well, wonderful. Well, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording. We're all wrapped up. Thank you all for being able to join the discussion today and follow up with some notes. And we'll be doing this again next week. But other than that, Beth and Ariel, I'll hook up with Kitty and we'll work out the back end of this stuff.
Great. Thank you. Bye.
See ya.